when you take your dose too high, whether it's with anabolics or whether it's with bioidentical testosterone, you fuck that balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and that relaxation is required for sexual function. And I think that that's why you get this like King Kong libido dopamine hit, but then over time, when your body doesn't regulate and recover properly, it just goes like, oh fuck, this is all screwed up, and then your libido just stops working. I think that it's great when people can come around from the viewpoint that they're just going to out testosterone their problem. I think a lot of people try to use testosterone as if it's some kind of like masculinizing injectable Adderall. That they're just going to keep, they up their dose, they honeymoon period because it's dopaminergic, and then they just keep upping it, and they end up just with like cranked out central nervous system, and they don't recover properly and just fucks.
Yeah, that's a terrible state.
Yeah. So I think if, when I've looked at people who've had, the thing that I found interesting when it comes to estrogen, and again, in defense of my more dogmatic friends, I have not found that serum estradiol level across the board, like in multiple people, correlates with estrogenic symptoms that closely. Now, obviously, if some guy's got an estrogen of like 4 times the top of the range, of course.
Yeah.
But I found that like, I've had guys who've got, estrogen in the middle of the range or like the top end of the range, and they've got horrific gyno and they feel terrible. And then I've got guys who've got estrogen double the top of the range and they feel fantastic.
Yeah, it's weird how there is differentiation between people for sure. I mean, I've seen guys be able to tolerate 50, 60, 70 picograms per milliliter. Usually around high levels of androgens. And I don't know. I mean, maybe there's some genetic basis for how they can tolerate that. But I have seen that as well.
I guess what I've found in practice has been when I've looked at because that was the thing that really bothered me in terms of being like, well, why is this happening to some people? Like I wouldn't accept that it was some kind of hard set genetic thing, maybe an epigenetic thing for sure. Like, increased feminized expression of genes from growing up hypergonadal, 100%. Yeah. But when I was looking at it from this other angle, I was like, well, what do these people all have in common who are having these problems? And when I looked at it, A1C was the biggest one. HbA1c was the biggest determining factor of who was getting these estrogenic side effects.
Interesting.
And my friend Jay Campbell's been harping on about this for ages, that the root cause of these estrogenic side effects is insulin resistance. And the thing that I found, the most common, and when I'm mentoring people on this is the thing that I get them to look out for, is that when people have got these estrogenic symptoms, they tend to have this concert elevation of cortisol, prolactin, and estrogen. Like I haven't found that when guys who are starting TRT and they get these like brutal side effects and they just can't tolerate it at all, I always find that prolactin's massively elevated. I always find that cortisol's elevated, and a lot of the time TSH is elevated too. So I think that, if people are going, look, I have to drop my dose to be able to tolerate it, as long as you feel fantastic, perfect. The lower dose is for you, awesome. Keep it the lower dose. Yeah. But if people are dropping their dose and being like, well, I've gotten rid of my side effects, but now I've lost all the benefits, that's when you have to go, okay, why aren't you tolerating the dose that you need?
Yes. But you got to look at that for sure. Definitely. Yeah.
I think that some people absolutely just have more sensitive androgen receptors than other people. And some people have way blunter receptors. And some guys need to be double the top of the range or even a bit higher. And some guys need to stay in the top quartile of the range, and any higher and they just get side effects.
Yeah. It's also, injection frequency has a lot to do with this too. Like, I mean, I can tolerate 1250, 1300 total testosterone, there without HCG, estradiol falls around 40, 45, which isn't entirely problematic, a little inhibitory to erections. But that's doing daily microinjections. If I injected what ultimately would get me to 1300 or 1400 in one injection a week, I wouldn't fucking tolerate it. Like I do terrible with bolus injections. Twice a week, I can barely tolerate, once a week is just not going to work. So there's something to say for a high androgen load at once, and thus all the metabolite action and all the neurotransmitter action that's coming along with that, and you not being used to that, versus microinjections, which I think is a good segue into that. I think as far as I remember, at least at some point in history, you were injecting twice a week. Number one, on TRT now, are you running once a week, twice a week, more than twice a week? And what is your take on 2x weekly versus 1x weekly versus daily microinjections?
Yeah, cool. Great question. So at the moment, I'm on cream purely due to availability in Europe. Wasn't an elective choice, but hasn't been something that I've had a problem with. And it kind of segues into my main point, is that I've been on TRT now for 8 years. And when I started TRT, I did daily injections for like 4 years.
Okay.
Well, not when I first started. When I first started, I did like one every 10 days or something stupid like that. But once I kind of worked my shit out, it was, daily shots.
Okay.
And then I went to every other day, went back to daily, and then went to 3 times a week, then went to 2 times a week. What I found is that when you start TRT, like, and the golden rule typically in people who I've spoken to has been when someone starts TRT, you start them off twice a week because they need to get used to injections, and then you increase frequency if they have side effects. Now, I think that you should start injecting as often as you're willing to, especially if there's novelty. If you're like, I'll do it every day, fuck, do it every day, 100%. Because you're going to be more sensitive to fluctuations when you first start. Your body's going to be like, what the fuck is this? So the smoother you can make the transition into TRT, the better. And I'm talking for the first like 2, 3, 4 years. I think that once you get like closer to a decade into it, I think you can just get away with less frequent injections because your baseline state is a higher testosterone state. I've just like, I used to be very sensitive to the peaks and troughs, and then I eventually just dropped down out of sheer laziness. But I found that there wasn't a consequence to it. I felt exactly the same. And then I swapped to cream, and I was expecting some kind of big, huge transition thing. No, didn't notice any difference. Felt the same.
Interesting. Do you find that cream is, stimulating, kind of like a potently stimulating nootropic, like a catecholinergic nootropic, or not? Because when I ran cream, I ran it for 40 days. My fucking DHT went sky high. I was sexually insatiable. Like, I could not get myself to control myself around women that I was dating at the time. But it felt like I had taken like high dose tyrosine in addition to modafinil with a lot of caffeine and maybe some teacrine. Does that do that for you? And do you think that's all about finding your dose, the amount of applications per day?
Without nerding out too much, I've got very fast COMT and very fast MAOB genes. So I do very well with things that are stimulating. So it definitely, you can definitely feel it. Yeah. Like it kicks. Yeah. 100%. But the interesting thing that I found for myself and for quite a few people is that some guys, if you put it on twice a day, it will completely fuck your sleep. Like, there's just no chance you're going to sleep. It's just super activating. But for guys like me, it's like a sedative. Like it massively improves my sleep quality. So I think your underlying neurotransmitter genetics play a big role in how you tolerate lower doses, higher doses of androgens, etc. I think that's a big factor. I think that genetics are a factor in that regard. But it definitely kicks, and you definitely have that stronger effect. But over time, like once you're on it for 6 months and it kind of smooths out, I think that kick kind of wears off, and I think that it just kind of becomes a bit more baseline. But yeah, when you first swap, like, for sure. And I guess the question with the cream is like, is that massively elevated DHT good for you, or is it not? Are the receptors just completely saturated and we don't absorb the rest and it's just spillover? Like, I don't know, but
I can tell for sure that, the snapshot of bloods for me, testosterone was super physiologic around 1200. This was 2.5, 3 hours after applying, was it 2 or 3? I think it was 2 pumps scrotally. DHT was 154 nanograms per deciliter. So on that scale, that's very, very super physiologic. So, the high DHT was at least a biomarker that I could look at and see was high, in the presence of cream. That obviously we know, both testosterone and DHT, but especially testosterone's got all these effects on neurotransmitter production and synthesis, specifically dopamine, but also noradrenaline and adrenaline. So, I mean, that could have played a role in that. The one thing I found on cream is that, so like 5 pumps a day at 200 milligrams per milliliter of a testosterone cream, 3 scrotally, and then 2 on the shoulder in the evening. That would overstimulate me, but my sex drive was fucking insane. 4 pumps a day, so just 2 scrotally in the morning and then 2 on the shoulders at night. The stimulation was still present on each application. It was still very noticeable, and I didn't love it. It was just a little too much. But sex drive was interestingly not as good. So that was a confusing thing for me. It's like, all right, if I want to get the max amount of the libido and erection part of it, like I was just getting spontaneous erections while sitting on my fucking laptop, which was crazy. Then I've got to dose, basically high amounts of it, but it gets to the point where it overstimulates me. I only ran it for 40 days. So what you're contending, though, is that if I had run it and tried to stick with it, maybe dose some theanine with it or whatever, for 100 days, that overstimulation may have gone away. Is that what you think?
Were you running prop beforehand, or were you running like an anti-cypionate?
I had made the switch from, God, I'm pretty sure I was running cypionate prior to that. And so, yes, that there is something to say about the leftover cypionate in the blood. But that effect did not stop the entire time. Like at day 40, when all that cypionate should have been out of the blood, it still was potently overstimulating.
Yeah, and there wouldn't have been that much left.
Yeah.
And I think that, but with that said, like your experience is, I wouldn't say like super common, but it's like something that comes up 10-20% of the time when guys go on cream. It's like, I don't like this. Like I use the word cranked, like, because it's like I'm overstimulated in a bad way.
Yes.
And I think what happens, like, whether it's from the DHT or whether it's just from the cream peaking higher or whether it's from it being more efficient in the blood because it's not having to get cleaved in the liver, like we don't really know. But I think that what happens is when you take your dose too high, whether it's with anabolics or whether it's with bioidentical testosterone, you fuck that balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and that relaxation is required for sexual function. And I think that that's why you get this like King Kong libido dopamine hit, but then over time when your body doesn't regulate and recover properly, it just goes like, oh fuck, this is all screwed up, and then your libido just stops working. So yeah, but on the other side of the equation with the cream, like some guys find that like they're running their total testosterone at like 1200, 1300. They've got like my units are different. I'm using units for your audience, but let's say you've got like, mid-range SHBG and you've got a total testosterone of like 1200, 1300, because, free is obviously the important part. I found that there's a whole bunch of guys who have that on injections and they don't really feel much, but then you put them onto cream and then they're like, oh, now it's working properly. Like
totally.
So whether that's, why that is, I'm not sure, different, neurotransmitter makeups and so forth. But that's why I like, people get annoyed when I say this because it makes the doctor's job so much harder, but I don't care. If you're on TRT for life, you should try injections and you should try cream. You should try both.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, definitely.
And because I've met so many guys who've been on injections for like 10, 20 years, they go on cream and they're going, holy fuck, this is so much better. Or guys who've been on cream for like 5, 6 years and they go on injections and they're like, all of my issues are gone.
If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below.
I see that too. And there's always, it's a bit of a contentious topic too, because people are like, on the testosterone subreddit, you got one camp of people that's like cream sucks and it's useless and it doesn't fucking absorb. And, they're usually muscle heads coming from, the steroid days where they're just injecting, large boluses of testosterone at once. And on the other hand, you got guys who absolutely swear by it. They're like, I was on injections. I couldn't manage the estradiol. There was a bunch of symptoms that I was having that I couldn't regulate no matter what I did. I got on cream and all that's resolved. So, it to your point about trying different esters and shit, like I think I would take it a step further and say, like, if you're really into experimenting and you want to be dialed in, you want to feel what that feels like to have perfect levels of testosterone for your body and estradiol, all the other metabolite hormones, the neurosteroids, the neurotransmitter effects, the confidence, the strength, the energy, the libido, the sexual function, then you should try everything. I have run testosterone cypionate. I've run testosterone cypionate infrequently. I've run daily injections of testosterone cypionate. I've run cypionate plus HCG. I've run cypionate plus HCG and various frequencies with an AI, without an AI. I've run testosterone enanthate, infrequent injections, daily injections, 3 times a week, with HCG, without HCG, with an AI, without an AI. I've run testosterone propionate, which I really loved. Except for the fucking pain, the post-injection pain was pretty terrible. And I've run prop without an AI, with an AI, with HCG, et cetera, and I have room cream as well. So I think you really should try everything you can, in addition to optimizing as many health markers as you can to reduce aromatization, to ultimately end up where, and this might take you a year, it might take you 2 years, to where you're finally dialed in on TRT. It is not easy, and especially with the prescription or the common prescription of of 200 milligrams at once with 0.5 milligrams of anastrozole a week, which is commonly coming from the clinics. It's just that might just fuck people's healths up and never get them dialed in. So you might have to go through a rigorous period of trying everything for adequate time, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe more, in order to fully get dialed in.
Yeah, completely. And like 2 points that are add on to that. Like I think, so if someone's sitting there being like, okay, I want to try everything, what do I try? I think one of the main things that everyone should try is daily subcutaneous injections. Now, I say that as someone who doesn't do them because they give me welts. They don't work for me. But if they did, I'd fucking do them. I think that like
so
anyone who can tolerate subcutaneous injections, do subcutaneous injections. It's just that like everyone I know, including me, does intramuscular injections because sub-Q doesn't work for us. But if sub-Q works for you, you should do that because that means that you can do it daily. And if my friend Dr. Keith Nichols, he had a great quote about this, and he goes, a diabetic child can administer long-acting insulin daily. If you as an adult male don't have the discipline to do daily TRT shots, if that's what you need to be able to tolerate it, and you're like, I need, but it's too much work. Like the juice is totally worth the squeeze. Like you find me any nootropic that will give you the effect of TRT. Like get fucked. Like it's so worth it. So daily subcutaneous injections, everyone should try. And I think that everyone should try cream. The only thing that's annoying about cream from like a relationship standpoint is for people who like, who share a bed. It means that, you can't put it on and sleep naked with your partner. And if that's a deal breaker for intimacy for people, I think intimacy and connection with is super important. But some guys do get away with just putting the cream on once a day as well. So trying it once a day, trying it twice a day. I mean, there's different things you can try there. And
I think it's not a significant trough. Like, well, I guess it depends on how you're metabolizing. But if you got 3-4 pumps in the morning, I mean, you're going to be super physiologic, at the very least therapeutic for a good degree of the rest of that day.
Yeah, like it's a 50% drop at 24 hours. But Neil Rousier has a theory that, and he's one of the leading lecturers on this, that testosterone agonizes the receptor for longer than the half-life. And like I can't say that like when I was doing cream once a day when I first started, it's not like I was waking up in the morning being like, oh, I'm only half the man I was at midday yesterday.
Right.
Like, it's not, you don't feel it. So I think I think the bolus dosing is just stressful on the liver, and I think that it's. The thing about TRT is that we're using bioidentical testosterone, but injecting an esterized version of it is not a bioidentical process.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. That means that I think that the rest of the organism needs to be better supported for that process to work properly. It's like a high stress, high pressure, high performance thing that we're making the liver do now. So if people are sitting there being like, I need to kind of, optimize myself to be like the best version of myself possible, like what do I start with? And I've done a lecture on this: drugs, alcohol, junk food, and not doing enough exercise. They're the 4 big categories. And sleep apnea. So sleep apnea being fit. If people can get on top of those things and then increase their injection frequency and see if they tolerate daily injections for sub-Q, and then if they don't, do daily intramuscular, like shallow intramuscular, and you can get on top of stuff with that. Like people might find they get a huge shift in the right direction just from a small intervention with that. And then you just take it from there. You make a strategic intervention and you go, I'm going to do this. And then we're going to do it for this period. And we're going to review these markers and we're going to review how you feel. And then we're going to take the next step. And I think that's what's important. It's not kind of having this feedback for guys being like, oh, well, estrogen's not your problem, so therefore you have no problems. It's like, no, like this person's got a bunch of issues and we need to resolve it. And if we're not going to use an AI, then we need to use other things to resolve the issue. And I think that's the really important part of it.
Totally.
Because there's a whole bunch of guys. Sorry, go on.
2 major points there. Number one, look, bolus injections, they're bad for a variety of reasons for, I guess, a good degree of people. But there may actually be, some negative interaction with the way that your liver is having to process that testosterone. I have seen that before, and I couldn't really explain it other than potentially mild test flu as a result of like an immunogenic metabolite of testosterone. That's like one of the proposed explanations for test flu. We didn't actually test this guy's liver enzymes. We ended up just changing the protocol to, a more frequent injection protocol. But this guy was getting unrelenting fatigue, injecting a bolus. So in that case, do you think the shit was just raising his liver enzymes, or his liver's having a tough time metabolizing it, or what?
I think there could be a bunch of stuff there.
That's a weird one, right?
If he was going, sometimes supraphysiological amounts of testosterone will suppress the thyroid, so it can uncover subclinical hypothyroidism and make it worse. Obviously, he could have been just injecting crap gear, and his liver was getting super toxic, and that's obviously a factor. But the ananthate and cypionate are molecules that have to be cleaved from the testosterone to make it bioavailable, and that goes through the liver. And they have a long half-life because it's basically like a slow release. It takes your liver time to do that work. So the more you're it's not that ananthate and cypionate are liver toxic. They're not toxic at all. But they're making your liver do a bunch of work. And we don't really understand, there hasn't been studies done being like, we injected this amount of ananthate and cypionate, and then this happened to the liver, and this is what happened. We don't have that literature. So it's, people like you and people like I and people like, all these other people on the internet who are doing this work, like, that's the importance of us having these conversations and discussions, because it's like, hey, I'm in the trenches all the time and I see this. And it's like, yeah, I see that too. Okay, what do you think that is? Could be this, could be that. Like, that stuff's really important. And I think that what's more important than I think people get tribal over stuff, which is weird, but I understand why, because it's human nature. And I think like the most important thing that everyone kind of has to come together on this with is that, like, there's a whole bunch of guys out there who are on TRT who are having side effects and need help. And like, that's the most important thing, is getting to the bottom of that and helping them solve that. And I think that's why conversations like this are so great. And all these different, when I started TRT, the problem was there was no information. It was my friend Jay Campbell's book, and that was it. There was no one had YouTube channels. Derek wasn't up, Steve wasn't up, TRT channel wasn't up. So, but at least that information wasn't confusing. Whereas now, like, fuck, man, like, if I started TRT today and went on YouTube, I'd just be like, what the fuck?
Stop doing all the things you shouldn't be doing, and start doing all the things you should be doing. If people are looking for where to start, it's that. Testosterone is what creates confidence. It's what gives the capacity for leadership. It's what drives the ability for one to become courageous and competent in their skill set. If you go on TRT and then live a lifestyle that you would never have those levels in the first place, your blood's going to get really